Dude, thanks, man. Thanks for coming on and kind of giving me your time for today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. How's everything going?
Things are kind of crazy at the moment. I put up a reel like right at the end of Friday, and it was just this video of me on my commute to the gym. This dude's truck caught on fire, and
Mm.
I I pulled him over, and we got the fire out together. But it's been absolutely blowing up. I think I'm like up to almost 7 million views now. It's
Jesus.
6.4. That's the biggest thing ever. So yeah, kind of dealing with that. My phone has just been exploding with notifications. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I've been pretty good. I've been trying to just take it easy and recover this weekend, and then obviously this happened. So,
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw that reel. I was like, oh, snap. I was like, that's a good catch.
yeah, that was pretty crazy that I was right place, right time, and that he pulled over so quick and just kind of everything lined up for us to take care of that pretty quick. So yeah, pretty glad it worked out.
That's awesome, dude. Well, yeah, man. It's awesome. Do you have any like time constraints or anything I need to be kind of mindful of, or are you kind of full
No, not at
schedule
all.
open?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Zach, it's pretty simple. So my podcast is a little bit different. So like I just really, dude, we just kind of bro out a little
Okay,
bit
I
and we
like
just
it.
talk about we don't this isn't like an overcoming adversity podcast. I'm literally just trying to dive in and wonder like, why, because you're a snowboarder and it's like I want to know why you snowboard, what it's done, how it's impacted your life, and then we just kind of see where the conversation goes. And I have kind of some questions in case we like look at each other for a minute. But other than that, we just see where it goes, and it's usually a pretty good time. So,
Sweet, I dig it.
all right, man. Well, I'll do a quick little introduction, or welcome you to the podcast, and have you introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thanks for coming on to my podcast, Wild Heart Athletics. It's a pleasure and honor to be able to meet you and talk to you for a little bit, and it means a lot that you came on. And I'd love for you to just go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on the show. My name is Zach Miller. I'm 25 years old, and I was born with left hemiplegic cerebral palsy. Because of that, I am a Paralympic snowboarder. So I compete with a bunch of other athletes that have physical disabilities, and it's led me all over the world. It's led to some crazy stories, some insane memories, and some pretty cool accomplishments too. And so yeah, I'm a guy who snowboards a lot. Play video games too in my spare time. Fat nerd, and just happy to be here and on the show and talking about just the day to day of what an athlete is kind of like.
Awesome, man. Well, my first question for you really is what's the greatest thing about snowboarding in your opinion? And then secondly, how has that sport really impacted your life?
Oh man. I don't know, because it kind of changes every once in a while. I feel like there are a lot of aspects of snowboarding that always bring me back to it. Obviously, there's the competitive aspect. That's the reason why I've dedicated my whole life to it. Is the feeling when you're in the gate and you don't know what's going to happen next. You're here at this competition. You're surrounded by all these other athletes you're competing against, and everyone's just kind of watching and waiting to see what happens. That's just a feeling I really haven't been able to emulate anywhere else. And so that's why I do it professionally. But I would say just the best part about snowboarding in general is just kind of the feeling you get once you're out on the snow and you can just kind of like breathe. Like there's this escape that I think snowboarding really provides. That's what got me into it initially. Before I even started competing, was just every once in a while I'd get lucky and kind of get out onto a run by myself. And when you're just out there taking up the whole run and you're carving back and forth and you can just feel your board just like dancing with you. And I like to ride with headphones in whenever I'm just kind of hanging out, just getting some casual runs. And so that feeling too, just when the right song kicks on and you're just out there connected with nature, you're out in the mountains, you're breathing in fresh air and you're making turns. I mean, you don't get that anywhere else. So that's what I love most about snowboarding? What was
I
what was the
dig it.
second bit of that
Yeah.
question?
So like how it's really impacted your life, and then I'd also love to kind of dig down a little bit deeper because you mentioned, oh, I had it and I lost it. The escape, and
Yeah.
I bring that up because I feel the same thing because I'm a climber, and like
Mhm.
that's kind of climbing is my escape, and so I'd love for you to kind of talk about that too.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with that other part of the question of just the impact it's had on my life is it's really difficult to put into words. I never really thought that it would become my actual career because people tell you that's not realistic, right? It's not realistic for you to you know plan on being a professional athlete, on doing it for your job, and so I definitely had that, from people who definitely had my best interests at heart. My parents and a lot of my close friends were like, "Hey, man, I'm glad that you like this snowboarding thing, but you know, maybe you should just focus on academics. Try and get through college first. Focus on getting the main things taken care of, and then kind of circle back to snowboarding." And that always just felt wrong to me. I was like, no, I don't like, I want to go for it. I want to give it everything and at least see. And, and so I did. I threw caution to the wind, and I spent every last penny. I was 16 years old and working at like a bakery shop, just making coffee for people and calling out orders. And I would just pinch pennies through the summer so I could just blow it all in the winter, going to these regional competitions and trying to get invited onto the World Cup circuit. And then once I did and I started doing well, that was when I kind of had to make this big decision because I got to, college age. I had applied to several colleges. I got accepted to one of them that gave me like a half ride scholarship. And so my parents were like, you gotta take that. I mean, that's a slam dunk. Like, take the scholarship, go to college, come back for snowboarding later. And I ended up basically doing it. I accepted the scholarship. I booked my flights and everything. And then my coach calls me and he's like, "Hey man, new season is starting up. Here's the first couple World Cups, and we might be able to link them up into like the same trip, save costs and all that. So I just need you to send me your info, shortly. We'll get to booking flights and we'll get on the road soon." And I was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like I'm going to college instead." And he was like, What do you mean you're going to college?" And I was like, "Yeah, I gotta go to college, dude. I gotta be smart about this. I gotta get the adult stuff out of the way." And he was like, "No, don't do that. Absolutely not. Like, you have potential and you're on the World Cup circuit. This is a big opportunity. College is always gonna be there. And I think that you have the potential. You have what it takes to be an athlete." And so I gave it some time to think about it. And then I went back into my parents' room and I was like, "Hi guys. Sorry to spring this on you. I've canceled my flights. I'm not going to college. I am going back to Colorado. I'm moving out, and I'm gonna see how this goes." And my parents were like, "Stop, wait, hold on, like at least think about it for a second." But I had been thinking about it my whole life, and this was my chance, and so I went for it, and I'm so glad I did because it totally ended up working out for me. I got connected with all the right people. And I started working my way up the circuit. I got invited onto the U.S. team, and now I'm here, training full time. And that's probably the biggest impact of what my snowboarding career has had on me, and what just the sport in general has done for me is it's given me an incredible community, the connections and the people that I've met and made through all these years of snowboarding. I mean, it's just given me so much useful perspective. It's given me so much support. I mean, you're going from all around the world to the same place, meeting all these other athletes with all their own stories of how they got involved in snowboarding and what it means to them, and then you're getting on course and you're racing against them, and that kind of feeling of camaraderie is so unique to me. It's been so incredible to have that. And so I would say that's by far the biggest thing. It's just the community and the family that I've made through snowboarding, and the sport has been awesome. And then to circle back to that other thing of just the escape and that core feeling that snowboarding provides. I mean, it's just that flow state that I think a lot of people can relate to. Whatever it is for you, we all have something that once you get into it, it's like this incredible experience where your brain just tunes out everything. I mean, you're not not thinking about work anymore. You're not thinking about stress. You're not thinking about bills or relationships or anything. You're just doing it. Your brain is like on this almost automatic process, and just everything is clicking, and you find yourself in this rhythm. And I think that's probably one of the best feelings life has to offer, man. Just that flow state of like, you're doing what you're passionate about, and it's just clicking.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. That, like you said, the flow state. And then you have that thing, like you said, you escape the schoolwork or your job, the bills, stuff like that. And it's really important that people find something like that. And like you said, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's just reading the daggone book sitting on the porch, I really would love to dive in, because becoming a pro athlete is really hard. Right. And so I'd love to hear your process with that, because that's a big risk that you took, and it panned out. But we can't discount the hard work that I'm sure you had to put in. I'd love to hear, what that was like, and how you trained, and like how you recover and nutrition, kind of dive down that training path too.
Yeah. I was very fortunate. Like, we'll just start off by just saying that I was lucky. A lot of things lined up for me. And I think that's why so many people are quick to say like, hey, you shouldn't go all in on this, because that is something that is very risky to do. And I would have set my life back years, if not decades, if it didn't work out the way it did, because I blew off everything. I blew off college. I blew off so many friends. I blew off a good portion of my family. I really threw everything into the wind and was like, I want snowboarding to work. And so definitely, it's fair for a lot of people to say that was a stupid decision. I'll give you that one for sure. Because it's so risky inherently. You really are setting yourself up for failure and hoping that there's the chance that you win. And for me, the biggest thing that turned it into a success, like I said, was the connections. I found the right people within the sport pretty quick. And those people were able to give me the right advice on just what to do, what to work on, what competitions to show up to, what to save my money for, so that I didn't have to do it all myself. If you can find the right friends and people within the circles that you want to be in to help guide you into that community and help you make the right decisions, you eliminate so much guesswork for yourself that it can really be the difference between success and failure. So for me, that was what turned it into a success, was just that I met the right people. And then after that, it was just, the last factor was my dedication. It was just how much I was willing to spend on snowboarding. And so I did the same thing for years and years and years, and I'm still doing it today. I sacrifice my summers. I just work throughout the entire summer, and I save all my money. I try and sell any of the leftover gear that I have that I'm not going to use next season. And I scrape by. And then in the winter, I'm able to actually live like an athlete. I'm able to spend as much money as I need to on food while I'm traveling, and being able to, give myself a nice place to sleep so I can get enough rest before a competition. It's really just been about like prioritizing where I want to put my resources. And it's been like survival mode for a very long time. A lot of people have reached out to me and they're like, yeah, but you're like this big successful athlete now, you're a 2-time world champion, you're a Paralympian. So obviously like you've made it, things are easy for you. And I'm like, no, dude, like I have credit card debt. I still have like some hefty bills that I'm going to have to pay soon. And I'm still scraping together the money to do it. It's still not all sunshine and rainbows, but I've at least gotten to a point to where, I've done this for long enough that I know how to save my money. I know what to save for. I know things that I can skimp on and things that are worth spending the extra money. And so just doing my research has helped a lot with that, of how I can best save my money, how I can use coupons, how I can recycle gear and stuff like that. And so it's just been, it has been pretty wild, because you look back and you're like, oh man, like I could just spend this entire podcast telling you all the different things that I've kind of sacrificed to like make my snowboard career happen. But then I could also spend the entire podcast talking about all the incredible things I've gotten because of my snowboard career that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise, no matter how many risks I took or what people I met. So it's really ultimately been like priceless for me, but at the same time, it's costed everything. So it's this weird coin where I don't know. I'm in it now. I definitely can't stop anymore. I can't give it up. That's for sure. But things are still definitely trending in the right direction for me. This last year, I was able to move out to Utah because we finally have new resources here with US Ski and Snowboard. So now my commute every day is up to Park City, and I train at the Center of Excellence with all the other pro skiers and snowboarders. And so that's been a huge step forward for me in my career. Is now I'm actually getting to spend a lot more of my time on nutrition, on time in the gym. Before that, I was not in the gym at all during the summers, and then I was behind a bar pouring beers, or I was behind a line making sandwiches. And so working in that helped get me to this point. And so I take advantage of all the resources I have on the team. So I'm able to save a lot of money. I still make a lot less. I think I still make the least of anyone in my family. When I go to do my taxes, it's a little depressing, but I'm still able to make it work because, like I said, I utilize the resources that are given to me. And so I'm very fortunate in that regard. But yeah, man, now I've been able to actually like dive into the science of sport and into nutrition, into the workouts in the gym. And dude, my coach is not taking it easy on me, man. I've been doing some crazy stuff in the gym. He's torturing me with the conditioning circuits and the metabolic stuff and all that. I've been learning so much of just how to really target things in the gym and what your body's really capable of when you start to get in there pretty frequently, on a consistent basis. I'm in there 4 days a week now. And yeah, it's tough work. Like I see any of those guys like Hugh Jackman, because he did this whole becoming Wolverine again, to get back into the gym and get his body looking amazing for the movie, which by the way, that movie is incredible. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's worth it. So good. Yeah. And he was just talking about like just the amount of like food he was eating, how he was just constantly just like chicken and beans and rice and stuff like that. And I mean, it takes so much dedication to get your body looking like that I have a lot of respect for sure. I don't go for looks. I go for the, practicality. I got to make my muscle, super functional for snowboarding. And so a lot of my stuff is like plyometric, or it's just focused on, like impact work, stuff like that. A lot of depth drops and landings that I'm doing with weight. And just a lot of, eccentric and concentric, but I'm doing mostly concentric work in the gym now. But yeah, it's just bonkers. The amount of science that is going on today, and how you can have an AI write you up like a decent workout schedule. If you want, you can literally go to ChatGPT and be like, I want to like do chest and back, and I want my traps looking insane. And like ChatGPT will be like, here you go. And it's a legit workout. So like, I don't know. We have so many incredible tools today now that I think it's pretty awesome to take advantage of. But then I'm also jumping into diet, man, and learning more in the kitchen. I finally actually have a kitchen. For the last 10 years, I was living in a loft above someone's garage because it made rent cheaper up there in Summit County in the mountains of Colorado. And so now I'm actually like cooking. I'm going to make a cheesecake later this week. That's on the to-do list. Never made a cheesecake before, but I'm doing that. And yeah, starting to get a little more adventurous in the kitchen. And now I can also see the appreciation that a lot of people have for cooking. I mean, for me, cooking was always like a chore. I'd rather just like, buy something and eat it. So it was just done and I got my calories in and I was taken care of. And now I can actually like appreciate food. So that's also really nice. But yeah, I mean, those are the things that I had to give up, to get to where I am today. And now I can kind of get back into those things and enjoy them again.
Man, that's incredible. Thanks for like your candor and honesty through that. Cause I think that's something people do, right? Like they can sit here and look at you right now where you are, but they don't, realize the sacrifice, the risk you got to take. Like you said, you hang out with people, you worked in the summers, you saved up, but you were intelligent about your finances too, that's a hard game to win.
It is.
you know.
Yeah.
But I would kind of off topic though. You're talking about cheesecake. I would tell you what the easiest dessert you can ever make is, and it's amazing. It's called a chocolate eclair cake, and all it
Ooh.
is instant vanilla, Cool Whip, graham crackers, and then a top layer of chocolate, and you let it sit in the fridge for a day.
Ooh. Okay. All right. Yeah. You're gonna have to send me the recipe after this, and then I'll just, because that's too easy. I mean, that's you got no excuse. Just throw it together, throw it in the fridge, boom. Dessert. I like it.
Yeah. Oh man. So you're talking about kind of diving in to your training and stuff like that. And you mentioned you're really smart and you kind of nerd out on stuff. So you've been nerding out pretty much on everything that your coach is doing and like really researching it on your own too, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's been awesome. I'm fortunate to have a pretty awesome strength and conditioning coach. He's worked with some professional teams in the past, and now he's working with us, which is awesome. But yeah, it's so cool to like show up and he's like, okay, we're beginning a new block for this month, and it's going to be focused on a lot of concentric work. So I'm going to have you holding a lot of positions, and you're going to be under stress, but it's not going to feel like you're doing much, but you're going to be doing a lot. And so then we get into it, and he's showing me these different exercises that I'm going to do and previewing them for me. And I'm like, that just looks insane. And then I get down into position, he throws the weight on, and, he's like, all right, 30 seconds. And like 5 seconds in, my body is screaming. And I'm just like, oh man, this sucks. This is actually the worst. I've never felt anything like this before. And then, when I'm done and we kind of rack up the weights again, then he's able to kind of walk me through of like, this is what it's doing. This is the kind of muscle we're targeting. And this is how I feel like it's going to benefit you once we get back on snow. And so it's also cool to just kind of like be able to tie things together from the gym into my sport. And it's something I definitely think a lot of people should do when they're building a routine in the gym, is that, for the longest time, I was not fluent in the gym at all. I was super nervous to show up to a gym, especially by myself. I didn't know, what the right, the right manners were for being in the gym, and you're surrounded by all these people who are, grunting and screaming and throwing up these huge weights, and you're just like, what am I doing here? And oftentimes it's very easy to just feel kind of lost. And so that's what I would recommend for a lot of people who, want to get into the gym, is just do some research at home and figure out what it is that you want to see from your body. If you want to go, for looks and you want that 8-pack and those pecs, popping, then absolutely go for it. If you want to get, stronger legs because you want to be able to squat more, then, start there and build your workout around a specific goal that you want from your body that you think you can attain within 6 months, as just like kind of a point of reference, and then go from there. Then start, either using AI or using different forums online like Reddit or Facebook or whatever, to just reach out and ask other people too. Because other people are always willing to like give you advice. I don't think you're ever going to ask someone for help and have them be like, oh no, why would you care? Like, people are going to be like, oh yeah, this is what worked for me, and I would love to show you. People are so eager to jump into that. And so, so I would do that for a little bit, but then again, it was just really difficult for me to still like feel confident in the gym. And then when I got here and I started training with this guy, I mean, I had no choice at that point, which is also, I'm very lucky to have that, someone forcing me, because it's my job now to do this. But yeah, I mean, now I'm like reading all the different books when I get home, and I'm like, why does this weird point in the middle of my back hurt? I've never felt this before. And they're like, oh yeah, that's because this muscle. And it's so cool to learn more about my body in the process too. I've also learned a lot more about my disability. I've had cerebral palsy for my entire life. It's a congenital disability. You're born with it. And so kind of my whole life, I've always like understood the kind of difficulties that it would give me, that I would have trouble balancing, I'd have trouble with coordination, and that my muscles would kind of always be, on the bottom end of the curve. But it wasn't until I really started doing a lot of work in the gym that I started to realize specifically kind of how that impacts me, and how it's crazy that your body is actually capable of a lot more, but your brain is often what's holding it back. because you either don't have stability when you're under load, or because you're doing a new kind of exercise that you haven't done before. And so your brain is just trying to keep you from injuring itself. It's just trying to keep you from doing something stupid. And so it literally holds you back. You feel like you're giving it everything, and then you realize that you're actually not. And so for me, like, it's been eye-opening to see that, like, once I start getting under some pretty heavy loads, I just start shaking because my brain lacks that, like, neurological connection to the muscles that most other brains do have. And so when I start to, like, really push hard and dig deep and really start pushing against some heavy weight, the signal is getting interrupted almost constantly, and it results in, like, my legs or my arms just shaking, which only makes it look worse, because I'm, like, underneath the bench press and I'm just shivering, and people are like, is that guy okay? But yeah, it's also been eye-opening there. I feel like when you get more in the gym and you actually start doing a lot of research and just moving weight, you do start to kind of realize, like, oh, okay, I'm capable of this. Turns out that's actually way more difficult for me than I thought. And that's, like, a huge place where I have room for improvement. So it's been a wild summer for sure, just to be like, okay, I'm finally, training like an elite athlete, and learning a lot about it in the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing too, right? Is you kind of have that hands-on approach. Like, even though you have a coach, you still have that, like you said, you go back and you kind of research. And then that has also developed your understanding with, the cerebral palsy that you have. And so now you understand that, you understand how it affects your body. So when it comes to training, you can tailor it a little bit. And now you're hitting and doing a little better than maybe if you didn't have the understanding, which is great how that understanding does that. But I think what's like, and before we kind of go down another topic, is I really loved how you said the specificity, right? Which is kind of a word in exercise science world. I love that word so much. It makes me feel smart. But and I think that's the cool thing, because it's goal oriented, right? Like, you're a professional athlete, like, you're in the gym to get better for snowboarding. Like the coach said, like, hey, this is going to benefit you when you get back to the snow. But then you also have those people who are just like, dude, I just want to lose weight. And it's like, so it's being goal oriented and really understanding what you want when it comes to that exercise or that strength conditioning, whatever it is. And that's the important part. And then finding, good resources, because there's a lot of good stuff out there, but there's also a lot of crap out there too, which is really hard. And that's really cool that you're kind of on the forefront and kind of going down and training a little bit more. And I think what maybe people don't understand is, you also have to, like, I'm sure it's your off season now, but then when it's in season, you're still training, but you also are snowboarding too, because you have to have, that's a skill set you have to develop, you have to maintain. So could you tell us, like, how you balance kind of like the gym and when it's like in season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It definitely doesn't stop once we get into the season. Once snow's on the ground, if anything, it just gets even harder, because then you're coming off the hill, you're exhausted, you're tired because you've done, 15 laps for the day, and you've put in some aggressive runs too. And then you still gotta hit the gym. And, at that point, we're not aiming for, like, building muscle mass or, hitting any new PRs or anything. At that point, a lot of what our goal becomes maintaining what we have and just trying to then support the areas that we're realizing we need just some extra support in. So, like, once I get back out on the snow this season, the first thing that's going to happen is just, I'm going to have to start checking in pretty regularly with my strength and conditioning coach to be like, hey, this is what's feeling a lot better for me this year. This is something that I'm still kind of struggling with. And so then he can kind of give me some extra exercises once I get off the mountain to just help kind of reinforce those pathways in my brain that it's like, hey, you can use this muscle even when it's tired. You can keep going, or just continue to build a lot of stabilizing muscles. You're not doing a whole lot of bench press anymore, but you are doing a lot of, like, single leg balancing on unstable platforms to try and, like, just improve that ankle stability, that knee stability, that hip stability. Snowboarding is about stability, snowboarding and skiing. You're mobbing down a mountain covered in snow and ice, and you're doing it because you got some plastic and metal attached to your feet. So stability is key. If you want to keep doing it well. but yeah, so then we start doing that. And a lot of it then, for me, the focus turns to recovery. Is like, as soon as I get off the hill, what's going to be the best thing to put my body through that's going to set me up for success again tomorrow, because I'm going to have to go again. Like, this is a training day. Tomorrow I got time trials, and then we're going to finals on Friday. And so I have to make sure that I am setting my body up for success over 3 to 4 days of being on snow, being on course, and doing some aggressive work there, so that I'm still, showing up to that last heat when a medal is on the line, still as close to 100% as I possibly can be. And so then it's just like food. It's just absolutely like crushing the hydration game, because I don't drink enough water. A lot of people don't drink enough water. Drink more water. And yeah, it's just, it really then becomes nutrition, recovery, stuff like that. So then I love to just get on a bike. That's probably the simplest and easiest way to just help your body recover after a good workout or just a pretty crazy day, is to just get on a bike and spin for a little bit. If you have an actual bike and you can go places, that's great. But I also just like, running down to a gym real quick, throw on some headphones and just like spinning for like 20 to 30 minutes. Gives your body the opportunity to flush a lot of that lactic acid out, get some circulation going back to like your legs and the muscles that need it. And then that can really, start it off right, for you to recover overnight. And then it's, getting a fat dinner in, lots of calories, making sure I'm getting a lot of protein. I bring like stuff to make shakes with on the road, just because it's easy to like pack some extra protein powder, pack some creatine, stuff like that. And then the biggest challenge, I think, for me is getting enough sleep. Like, dude, sleep has a pretty big impact on your physical performance, on your mental performance, on your recovery, on just your raw strength. And so that's like kind of been my new nerdy fixation, is just, I'm like looking up all the different sleep studies of just like, what's the best way to really like capitalize on the time you have when you're unconscious to then use it when you're conscious again. And so I suck at sleeping. Every time I've ever worn, like a wearable, like a Fitbit or whatever to bed and woken up the next day, I always get a notification on my phone that's like, what's wrong with you? Did you even sleep last night? And I'm like, I tried to. I actually feel really good. And then I look at the score and it's like, no, dude, you slept terribly. You were basically like sprinting in the middle of the night. And I'm like, okay, all right, man. I don't know. I don't even know what to do here. So yeah, that's been the new thing for me, is trying to make my sleep game a lot better, because it's easy to stay up, man. It's I'm a night owl, and so I love it when it's like 2-3 a.m. and no one's up and you just kind of have the world to yourself. But I can't do that when I got a competition coming up in 6 or 7 hours. So so that's a bit of a hurdle for me right now.
I'm right there with you. I get a couple hours a day if I'm lucky, and then I take melatonin every day. I've done it for years, so just how it goes. His name, it's Andy Galpin, I think is his last name. He's really good. He does a lot with like exercise science and sports performance. He's been on a couple podcasts. He's like really, and he started his own. He just did one on like sleep, and it was really interesting. I didn't watch it, but there was a clip on there, and he was talking about like, you don't really, he's like kind of ignore the sleep score, which that makes sense, because I'm like you. I've had like, I wear a Garmin and I see my sleep score, my heart rate variability, and I'm like, I felt like I slept great, and like you said, it just says you slept like shit. Like,
yeah.
So it's like, take it with a grain of salt, and I think it's just that the best thing to do, you're talking about sleep studies, is really just a good little routine of going to bed the same time and then waking up at the same time, and that usually can kind of solve a lot of problems if you're out there struggling with sleep like I am, and fortunately like you are too.
Yeah, man, it's ridiculous the impact that your sleep has on your next day. Who'd have thunk, right? Who'd have thunk that we actually need to rest our bodies in order to give them what they need for another day? So dumb.
Yeah. You mean creatine and carbs and protein is not good enough?
Yeah, why can't I just continue to eat and then stay awake forever? Why doesn't that work?
Yeah. So we've hit up training a lot, but I'd love to kind of circle back and talk about the community aspect. And I think that's important, and it doesn't matter like whatever sport you are, or I think individually we as humans, we need a connection and we need the community. And I know that I've experienced like a good community when it comes to rock climbing. Like, you mentioned it's like a second family almost when it comes to snowboarding. I think I'm going to be a little bit biased, but I feel like I see that more in like the outdoor sport industry than I do. I mean, you see it in others.
Yeah.
And like I said, I got biased, but can you really elaborate on the impact that had on you? Because it sounds like you had some really good mentors too, to really guide you through this journey as you got into, pro snowboarding and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you got a good point. The climbing community is pretty incredible. I've been trying to do a little bit of that this summer. Bought my own climbing shoes. Yeah. And so I'm finally getting out, on the rocks and, starting to do some climbing there. And so, yeah, I think it is a pretty interesting observation that the outdoor industry, the outdoor sports definitely seem to have a pretty open community. And I think it's because a lot of it is because, it's people that are trying to get outside. They're trying to get more connected. They're trying to get more grounded. And so I think they're always a little bit more open to trying to help people do the same. Obviously I play a lot of video games, and those communities can be like the most toxic, just salty, infested places you will ever see in your entire life. So I'm actually, now you got me thinking, like, I'm pretty curious, what is it about the difference between like outdoor and indoor that tends to have a pretty significant impact on like behavior and just that sense of community? It's very interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. You got me you got my interest piqued for sure. I'm pretty curious about this. But yeah, I mean, the snowboard community is incredible. It's just full of a bunch of fellow knuckle draggers, that all just want to go sideways and look cool and have fun while they're doing it. And I mean, that's what attracted me to the sport in the first place. I started by skiing. It was through my hospital sports program, because I was a regular patient going through a lot of physical therapy in my early years, trying to develop as healthy as possible with cerebral palsy, that I was, invited to be a part of this hospital sports program that Children's Hospital had in Colorado, in Denver. And so they threw me on a bus with all these other regular patients, all these other kids my age, and they took us up to Winter Park and they taught us how to ski for a weekend. And so that's how I discovered kind of the mountains. But then after skiing for like 2 years and just doing it through that, which was every other weekend for like two or 3 months, it really wasn't a lot. That was when one day I just got on the chairlift, and I'm headed up with my coach, and I guess my instructor at the time, and I see just this pack of snowboarders that's ripping down. They're going through this park, and they're hitting rails. They're dropping to the half pipe together. They're spraying each other with, powder and stuff on the side of the run. And they're just like hooting and hollering, man. Like, they were just having a good time. And when I saw that, I was like that's what I want. That's that looked so fun. And so I turned to my instructor and I was like, I got to try that. And she was like, okay, but like, snowboarding is a little bit harder to learn. You only got 2 edges. You got to balance a lot more. Your feet are stuck together. So, maybe we'll just, and I was like, nope, don't care. Want to do it. Get me on a snowboard as soon as possible. And so they got me on a snowboard shortly after that. And even though it was like difficult for the first, couple weeks, like learning to turn on a snowboard I always say that snowboarding is harder to learn, easier to master. Skiing is the opposite. It's easier to learn, but way harder to master. Especially when you get into like some of the real technical stuff on the mountain. Skiing, that is bonkers. Like, hats off to those insane backcountry skiers that are doing those insane runs with 4 edges to manage and 2 planks that can go sideways and wrong at any point. I almost kind of find comfort in the fact that my feet are strapped to the same piece of plastic and metal. But yeah, man, that was just kind of what initially like really got my interest peaked with snowboarding. And then as I got more into it and I started meeting people through the sport, like that kind of connection only really grew, because that's what I feel, life is all about. Is you have, pretty limited, if we're speaking relatively throughout history, you got a real limited window of time that you're going to be around, that you're going to be able to do all the things that it is you want to do in life. And unfortunately, sometimes some of those things are going to be off limits. I'm never going to be a Formula One driver as much as I want to be. Not going to happen. not enough opportunities there. But there's still plenty of other things that, I really want to do with my life. And snowboarding was always the biggest one. And so I went for it. And meeting the right people, again, just circling back to that was key, because when you have a good community of people that have that same shared passion of whatever it is, and you start hanging out with them regularly, I mean, you put just enough people in the same room and ideas start coming together. I mean, people start, coming up with like, okay, well then, what are we going to do to train for the next competition? How can we build a team to make this development process easier? And, I was fortunate enough to benefit from a lot of very early programs that had just recently started, that then I got to basically take full advantage of. And so snowboarding, obviously it came after skiing. It took a long time for snowboarding to really be accepted as a real sport, same as like skateboarding and a lot of those other ones. And then with Paralympic snowboarding, dude, we're just like a baby sport. We weren't included in the Paralympic Games until 2014 in Sochi, Russia. So we've only been around for 3 games. And so it was pretty instrumental that I got involved with the sport when I did and in the way that I did, because it was really just becoming official. And there were a lot of people that wanted to make the sport happen, that were pushing for it, that were pushing for its legitimacy, that were trying to create more development teams around the world too. A lot of other countries were starting to pitch in on it and organizing, World Cups, so that we actually had a circuit around the world that we got to travel around and compete in. And then we had to pitch it to FIS, to the, Federal Internationale Day, whatever, of skiing. And then, that got accepted. And then we finally made our last pitch to the International Paralympic Committee and got it into the Paralympics. And so I got to watch all of that happen by a lot of people who came before me that were really passionate about snowboarding and wanted to see an avenue for people with disabilities to have a platform and a stage to actually compete on, show the world what we were capable of. And so then I got to jump in shortly after that and got to be a part of this fully legitimized sport that was brand new, that was gaining a lot of traction. And I got to be pretty much at the forefront of that. And so that's just been an incredible experience, because I'm 25. A lot of people, they say that I'm young, but like I'm technically a veteran of the sport because I've been around for only a few years less than like the sport has. And so that was just something that I always find crazy to look back on, is that it really was because of the people who came before me, that first generation of athletes that were like, this is a legit sport. Like, I want to make this happen. And they got up in everybody's face about it, and they made it, official. And then I got to benefit from it. That's what a community can do. That's what a community is capable of when they work together. And so now I'm just trying to be as best a part of that community as I can be. Now I'm kind of starting to think about, what my legacy will be and how I'll kind of push to help build the sport into something even better for the next generation of athletes. So I think that that's also an important thing, is once you do find something you're passionate about, it's so important to get involved in that community as fast as you possibly can, because chances are it probably needs you. There's so many communities that need just more support. But then also like being a part of it and helping grow it for the next people is what ends up being all these incredible things that we now get to take advantage of today. So, dude, it's really about the people. Something that always stuck out to me when I was like in high school, I was thinking about going into college. As my teacher, he always said, people don't quit jobs, they quit people. And they did these studies of like how when people, handed in their resignation letter, or they put in their 2 weeks notice, or they just straight up walked out on a job, the vast majority of the time, don't quote me, but I think the percentage is legitimately above 90% of people that were surveyed. It wasn't because they didn't like the job. It was because they didn't like the people that they were working with. And their boss or their coworkers or the people that were working underneath them were just making the job way too stressful. They were making it not worth whatever benefits it had or pay. And so they quit the job. And that's the biggest piece of advice that stuck with me throughout all my early years, was that if you can find the best way to network, and create a good group of people that you can spend time around, whether it's, it's a group of people at work or it's a group of people in your hobby that you can just really connect with, that adds to it so much more. If anything, it just doesn't take away from it anymore, because I've seen plenty of people burn out on snowboarding that could have been like incredible athletes, people that had potential, people who were fighting for medals and were going to be like a face of the sport. And then they walked away because there were too many politics involved, or they were getting in fights with their teammates or stuff like that. And I mean, it can have like some pretty drastic impacts on your career, on your work life, on your mental health and your social life. And so that's just the most important thing to me, man, is like, you gotta work the people before you start working the job or the hobby or whatever it is, because they are what will make or break it.
Yeah. And I mean, that just circles back, right? You talk about community, but the environment in which you put yourself in is really what is going to make that difference, because we have this climbing community and we have the snowboarding community, the outdoor community, or whatever sport you're in. But it's like, you're also going to find your people within that community. And that's the key, is to find those people, because there's going to be there's climbers. I'm like, yeah, you're a cool guy. I like you, but we're not going to hang out that much.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like they're a bad person. It's just like, our personalities don't vibe. I think that's the thing people don't really understand. But at the same time, you just got to find your people.
Find your people, man. That is the best way to put it. Yeah.
You mentioned something really interesting that I think we could dive down into, and I think it's something that I believe is probably starting to get noticed more, and there's a lot of awareness for it. Is, you mentioned that as a kid you got to go and do kind of those programs to really get you introduced to sports. And can you elaborate or maybe dive down that path and tell us like how impactful that was? I know it was there, you said they were kind of newer programs, but how important is it for us to start introducing kids, you think, early, especially this can be adaptive or not, right? Like, but I would say on the adaptive end, they're harder to find. And so maybe what's kind of how important is it? And then what do you think a good solution would be?
Dude, it's a great question, but it's so important, because I mean, so many people my age right now in their mid-20s, I'm starting to find are like kind of freaking out, because I was listening to this one woman talk about it. She called it the great scattering. It's like this phase in your life when you finally got like out of high school or even college, and you don't have any structure in your life anymore, and you don't have anyone telling you what to do, where to go, where to be, anything. You're literally just like left, and you're just sent out into the world, and good luck, like sink or swim. And you have like your education or whatever, that you have your degree, but like unless you found a job right out of college, a lot of people are left like wondering where to go, what to do, what they're even going to do with their lives. And I think a lot of that is because as a kid, they weren't really like introduced to enough things to find out exactly what their passion was. Like, a lot of people, they go into college and they pick a major because they just feel like it'll be a good major, because they saw it in a survey somewhere that was like, oh yeah, this major tends to pay this much for a salary position, and this major tends to pay this much. And so people will be like, oh yeah, I'll just take a business major because looks like all the business majors that are graduating from this college are making a lot of money. But like, they're not thinking about how exactly they're going to do it. And you usually don't, unless that's something that like you started planning on as you were a kid. And so for me, I mean, I would never have discovered snowboarding if it wasn't for the hospital sports program introducing me to skiing. So I think the US honestly is doing a really good job of creating a lot of programs like that. I think a lot of people should definitely be more open to the idea of like government funding going to them, because our government funding doesn't really do anything for a lot of major programs. Our whole like Team USA, all those athletes that just got done competing in Paris at the Olympics, none of those athletes receive any kind of government support from the United States government. All the other countries, not all, but most of the other countries that have some kind of funding set up for their teams, that allow them to pay their bills and get their equipment and be able to compete at the elite level. But in the United States, a lot of that stuff ends up having to become a nonprofit organization that relies on donations, that relies on just external support from businesses or volunteers. And so that is why, number one, I have so much respect for people who do volunteer for a nonprofit. If you don't volunteer for a nonprofit, find one. There are so many in the United States, and I guarantee you there's a nonprofit that probably is dedicated to a purpose that you absolutely vibe with. So like, just jump on Google or ask an AI of like, give me a list of just some nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to this, that are dedicated to getting kids in sports, that are dedicated to a specific type of education or something, and then go and find out how you can be involved. You don't always have to just give money. Sometimes giving your time is even more valuable than that. And people like have time to give to a lot of these organizations. You'll also find that a lot of times that benefits you directly and personally as well, because then you start meeting people through that organization, through that community, that then just help you further jump into that passion even more. So like, in my opinion, that's like, if anyone's going to remember anything from this podcast, like go find a nonprofit, go find any nonprofit that does something that you care about and find a way to get involved. Because they are always looking for help. I guarantee you they're looking for help. But yeah, mine was adaptive action sports. I got involved with snowboarding through my hospital, and it wasn't until about 2011 that I discovered that there was this racing category of snowboarding where you could go as fast as you wanted to go. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty interested in that because I do like going fast. And then in 2012, that was when I met this guy named Daniel Gale, who has probably played the most instrumental role of anyone in my life. He is a development coach that co-founded Adaptive Action Sports with his wife, Amy Purdy. You may have heard of her. She's a multiple Paralympian. She's got Paralympic medals. She's been on Dancing with the Stars. And she is a bilateral below-knee amputee that just the two of them met at a bar. And I think they had the same tattoo. And they just got to talking, and she was talking about how she really wanted to become an athlete, regardless of her disability. Like, she wanted to snowboard. She wanted to be a professional snowboarder. And he had a lot of experience with business and knew how to start a nonprofit organization. And so then they just partnered up, co-founded this organization, and they made it all about adaptive action sports. They started teaching athletes. They would host camps to teach skateboarding or snowboarding, and they offered it to wounded veterans. They offered it to people born with disabilities, people who faced traumatic injuries, and wanted to just get back out there. I mean, their focus is really improving quality of life through sport. That's kind of what the organization is about. And I met them through this big community ski racing event that was hosted in Breckenridge, that taught younger kids what it looked like to actually compete in ski and snowboard racing. And so I met him there, and he gave me a patch, and he told me if I wanted to be a racer, if I wanted to be a professional snowboarder, that I should reach out. And so I ran to my mom, and I was like, you gotta meet this guy. And so we got connected with him, and they had this office at the base of Copper Mountain. And I was able to go out there and just start training with that team. There's just a ragtag group of other snowboarders there that were trying to build their way onto the U.S. team and get onto the World Cup circuit. And some of the greatest memories I have in life were made with that crew of people who didn't have much, but they had like a passion for snowboarding. And Dan was able to run an organization that provided the right resources for us. So like, we got mountain passes, we got access to, snowboard equipment, and we got access to prosthetic equipment for the athletes that needed it too. He was able to apply for grants and talk to companies that would help sponsor, whether it was prosthetic equipment, or it was helping sponsor just like a trip to take the team to a World Cup to try and get some World Cup points and get added onto the circuit. And so, yeah, getting involved in the programs while I was still young set me up for success, but also just like the fact that my parents were willing to expose me to basically everything. Like they were willing to just get me out there, like force me to play soccer, at least make me try t-ball, and just doing stuff like that at least helped me get out there and kind of start to figure out what it is that I liked in life, what I wanted out of life. It helped me make a lot of friends too. I met so many cool people through the different sports that I played that I'm still friends with now. That I think it's so imperative that we focus on super young kids and just getting them into the development pipeline. Whether, I mean, now it's crazy because now you see where it's actually succeeding and what it's already starting to turn into. What is it? Two of the youngest competitors at the Paralympic Games, they're like 11. An 11-year-old was competing in skateboarding, in the street skateboarding competition. Like
Jeez.
That only happens because they were on a skateboard at like 2 years old, and now they're an Olympian and they're like in middle school. What's that's just insane to think about. It also makes me feel a little rough about myself because it's like, oh, dude, you're 25, it's insane. But yeah, I mean, that's if there are any parents that are going to listen to this, like just get your kids. I'm biased to get them in sports because that's where they'll just meet a lot of people, and they'll figure out what sports they like. But also just like get them in creative programs, take them to the library, see if your community has any events going on that will teach different things, whether it's a pottery class or whatever. Just getting kids out there and doing different activities. I mean, kids are so eager to learn. Like especially once they're able to start talking and like asking questions. Any parent knows this. They just don't shut up anymore. You become their Google and you have to answer all their questions. You got to do their homework. You got to do stuff like that. So if we can find more ways to just give that energy, that desire for information, for knowledge, for new things, and just get more things in front of them. I mean, for me, I was able to just figure out what I wanted very quickly because of that. And so I think a lot of kids will be able to benefit from that, from just doing anything, just do things, just make them do things.
Yeah. And you brought up some interesting points too, right? Yeah, it's great. You give some money to a nonprofit, but like, time is so valuable. And like, yes, you have to value your time, but like you said, you don't get that same connection. You won't get the same networking opportunities if you don't sacrifice some of your time to go help out. And then there's no better feeling in the world than like helping and serving others. And I think that's where we as a society need to start kind of thinking too, right? And I'm not going to go on a tangent, but like, right now we've kind of seen a lot of selfishness, and I think it comes to serving others and you feel the good that you get from that. I think could really change a lot of things. And then, like you said, in turn, it would make more programs like the one you got to be part of. Maybe a lot of those could start, popping up. And all it does too is just take one person to do it, or a bunch of people to do it. And
or two people just meeting in a bar, like it happened with me, having an organization. But yeah, man, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Like, yeah, you get a tax cut or whatever when you donate, but when you give your time to organizations like that, that's when you see the real benefits.
Yeah. And kind of going off of that, I'm really curious, and this is going kind of down a different pathway now. Could you talk about the first time you ever went to a competition and like, what were your nerves like? What was going through your head? I'm really curious.
It's so funny that you asked that because it's going to turn out to be a pretty hilarious story.
Let's do it.
So the first actual race that I showed up to was just a regional USASA kind of local event. I had signed up for the adaptive category, and I was very nervous because it was my first race. It's a big deal. I wanted to do well. I wanted to perform well. And, maybe potentially there might even be a medal on the table, but I don't even want to get into that yet, because it's really just going to be about like, I just want to get to the finish line. And so I'm overthinking it. I'm so stressed. I'm worried about it. I show up, and like one other dude signed up for the adaptive category. So it was me and one other guy. And I was like, oh, sweet, I got a medal. Like, and they're like, no, you didn't get a medal yet. You still have to finish the race. And I was like, okay, you're right. I do have to finish the race. And so I get into the gate, and because the adaptive category did not have like age brackets like you do when you're able-bodied. When you show up to one of these regular events, you usually get classified by your age. You compete against similar age competitors, so that way it's still kind of fair. With the adaptive category, that's like way too many categories to then duplicate everything, have all the same age brackets. You're also just not going to have that many numbers, because let's face it, most people with physical disabilities are not out there competing in sports. And so they just had this basically open class adaptive category. And so one other guy signed up. He was a wounded veteran that lost his leg in Iraq, and he was about 10 times the size of me. And when I showed up to the course and I saw him, I was like, I am so screwed. This guy could eat me for like an on-hill snack. And and now I'm gonna have to race against him. And so I got in the gate, and he was actually so cool about it. He was getting a major kick out of the fact that this like 10-year-old kid was like getting all amped up to race him. And so he's just like, hey man, good luck. And he just gave me a fist bump in the gate. And I was like, are you supposed to fist bump your competitors? I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to. Like, I got to tell this guy to like buzz off or whatever. But then I was like, all right, I'll just fist bump him. So I like didn't even say anything. I was way too shy. Fist bump him. And then, they put us in the gate, and race is ready, attention. And I'm like, start to panic, and they just drop the gate, and I jump out on course as fast as I can. And this guy is kind of already smoking me, basically because he weighs like 200 pounds and I weighed like 90 at the time. And so he's just absolutely creaming me. We get to like turn 2, I think, and he ends up catching this edge and falls. And I, being a kid and just never being in a competition like this before, I stop right past him, and I'm like, hey man, are you okay? And he's like, yes, why are you stopping? Go. He just tells me to go while he's getting up. And I was like, oh yeah, it is a race, huh? I'd never done this before. So I thought you were supposed to stop and ask and make sure he's okay, because my parents always, every time I fell, they were like, hey, are you okay? And so I just did what I thought was the appropriate thing to do. And he's like, no, dude, we're racing. Like, go. And so I'm like, oh yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, we're racing. And so I get going again. And I end up, coming across the finish line first. And, there's a couple like families that are there supporting, their athletes that are going to be dropping after me. And they see me come through, and, I come through first. And so they're ringing cowbells and they're cheering and everything. And, I'm like, I feel like I'm at the Olympics. Like, here is my stadium, my audience. They're cheering for me as I'm coming across the finish line. I'm like, this is the coolest feeling ever. This is so awesome. And yeah, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, this sport is awesome. The course is so cool, and the racing, and the fact that you're right next to your competitor the whole time, and then you come through the finish crowd, people are cheering. I'm hooked. There's no coming back from that. And so that's like my first ever competition. I got up on the podium. I got my gold medal that it was for sure not gold. And and then that was it. And I still have it like at my parents' house. My parents still have that in a nice little case. But yeah, that was like that was my first competition. I was not prepared for it at all. And then I built up to my first World Cup race, which that's an incredible story too, because I'm in the sport now. I'm training, I'm competing with other athletes, and I finally get my first World Cup invitation. The invitation didn't even go to me, but my coach was able to apply for a wild card slot, and so I got in on this free wild card slot. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna make a statement. And so I just bought this brand new, my first race board, and the boards that we compete on they're not normal like most regular snowboards. They're completely flat. They have no camber. They have no shape to them. They're literally just flat, and they're very thick. They're kind of heavy, and they have some sharp edges on them, dude. They are stiff, like uber stiff. And so they're meant that way because when you're turning and you're under a lot of pressure, that board needs to be able to basically snap back out of a turn and return all the energy you just put into it to give you this like almost speed boost effect. They are a very interesting experience to try riding. And so I just got my first custom race where I felt so cool. I had all custom designed with wolf on it. I felt like I was so cool. And I show up to the competition. I get on the World Cup course and like, dude, this thing is not messing around. I've never been on a course like this before. It had a road gap. You literally had to jump a road. It was they had to stop traffic for you to jump over a road. Bonkers. I had no business showing up to this World Cup. And so training starts, and I'm watching athletes because I'm way too scared to get on this course initially. And I'm taking extra runs through the park and just, out on the regular, like open slope. And I'm just trying to like get a feel for this board. And finally I'm like, all right, I'm ready to jump on course. I'm ready to give it some. And so I get in the gate, and the rider before me, he gets to a big enough gap, and the course official looks at me and goes, "You're good to go." And I was like, I don't think I'm good to go. I almost wanted to puke. And so I rally, I pull out of the gate as hard as I can, and I get on course, and I'm like, okay, you know what? This isn't that bad. This isn't that, like, keep your speed up. Because at this point, like on courses like that, the faster you go, the safer you are. The second you start to scrub speed, that's when you're not going to clear jumps. That's when you're not going to, get over the sections you need to. And so I'm just going full gas, pedal to the metal, and it's starting to like come alive. Like I'm starting to really experience what border cross is all about. And I'm hearing, trumpets in the background, whole choirs are singing me along, and everything is like, it's incredible. I am the main character. I make it over the road gap, and there's this quick left and right before it drops into like the last two jumps and the finish line. And I'm like feeling really good about myself. So I take that first turn, I take the second turn, and when I go to actually like pump this little transition that I got to build a little bit more speed right before I hit this jump, I forget that I am on a super aggressive tuned custom race board. And when I push down, I'm not level on my base. And so you've got to make sure that like when you put pressure on those boards, that they're flat. Because otherwise, if it's on an edge, which I was at the time, and you put pressure, you do bend it, you engage the edge, and it turns. And these things, like, they will turn. They take hard turns because they have to. They got to cut through ice to change your direction. And so I push down, and I take a hard right as I'm going off the lip of this jump. I clip one of the gates, I fly through the air backwards, and I land directly on my head. And my coach was filming at the time, and he was like, "Oh no!" He drops the camera. He runs down there, and he's asking me, he's like, "Zach, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Like my head hurts, but I'm okay." And they're like, "Okay, where are you? What day is it? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm in Aspen. It's Friday. It's March, and I'm competing at a World Cup. I'm at my first border cross World Cup." And they were like, "Whew. Okay, like he's good. Did you lose consciousness there for a second?" I was like, "I don't know. I think I'm fine." And they were like, "All right, well, I'm going to ride the lift up with you just to make sure you're okay." And once we got on the lift, dude, I'm like, "Did you see the crash, by the way?" And he's like, yeah, I saw the crash. I got it on video." And I was like, "Oh, you got it on video? That's so awesome." Dude, I can't wait to see that video. That was crazy. I can't believe I survived that. Oh, man. And he's like, "Yeah, well, I'm just glad you're okay. So, just kind of focus up. You know what you did wrong. Don't do it again next round." I'm like, "Yeah." And 10 seconds goes by, and I'm like, "Hey, man, did you see the crash?" And he was like, "Oh. Yeah, buddy, I saw the crash. Did you get it on video?" "Yeah, all right. This kid's cooked." And so they take me down to the bottom, and it starts getting worse and worse and worse, to the point to where like people can introduce themselves to me, and I have no idea who they are if they walk around the corner. And so then the concern becomes, because I'm not getting better, and it's been like 2 hours now, the race is over and everything, I'm still asking if practice is open. And they take me into a hospital, and they set up an MRI to see if I had like brain hemorrhaging, because they were potentially going to need to like operate if it wasn't getting any better. And finally, at the last second, dude, I finally remember that I got in a wreck, but I still don't know what's going on. And I just did the rest of the season out. It was right at like the beginning of March. First World Cup I've ever been to. Still had all of March and April. There were 2 more World Cups that I had planned to go to, and I had to sit the whole thing out. And I spent the rest of that summer like rememorizing my parents' phone numbers, learning how to do like math again. Numbers were so hard for me after that yeah, I've since like pretty much fully recovered. But dude, concussions are no joke. You only get one brain, and you got to take good care of it. But yeah, snowboarding is definitely it's put me in check once or twice for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, concussions are really bad. And so for all the people listening, especially if you're younger, wear a freaking helmet.
Wear a helmet. Yes.
I was climbing checked me last year. And so, and I typically have been one of those that would not climb ropes with a helmet. And thank God I had one. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, fair enough, dude. Helmets are invaluable, man.
But all those incredible experiences you had, dude, I loved hearing about like racing that veteran and stuff. And then, unfortunately, you took that crash and burn in the first Worlds. But, the nervousness you felt towards those competitions, do you now have like maybe like a ritual, or are you really good at kind of calming yourself now when it comes to performance?
That's a good question. I think it's definitely gotten like more comfortable for me to be nervous. I don't think I wouldn't say I actually get less nervous. I think I just am more acclimatized to the feeling.
Gotcha.
Definitely. Yeah. When I show up to a World Cup now, it's still just a little bit like, because now I don't know, like things have changed in my sport because I've been able to, win a couple competitions. I've been able to medal at a lot of World Cups. And a lot of people have now started to kind of watch me on course too. So now I have like this added pressure of like, every time I drop on course, a bunch of other teams and athletes are watching me to see what I do because they're going to base their run off of that. And so, if I fall flat on my face right out of the gate, then that's going to be pretty embarrassing because people are going to be watching. And so, yeah, I mean, there's new things now I would say that make me nervous, but I mean, I think it's so good to just be nervous. Like if you are nervous, that means you're doing something that you're a little uncomfortable with, and people should do that as much as possible. Because when you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, like that's when you progress. That's when you grow as a person. And so, that's where I've made the most progress in my life is when I've been in a situation where I'm like, dude, I don't know about this, but you kind of put the fear aside, you don't deny it or anything, but you acknowledge it, you move it aside and you go, that's another piece of good advice that my coach gave me, was just like, just do it scared. Like, it's okay that you're scared. Just do it scared, commit to it. Don't, don't half-ass it. If you're going to go for it, commit. So that way, you don't get hurt, that you actually give yourself a reasonable attempt at it. But yeah, man, just do it scared. Put yourself in situations where you are unsure of how it's going to turn out. And that now is like a feeling that I look forward to. I mean, that's when I start to smile now, is like I show up to a new season, we get in the gate and it's the first race of the season again. I start to feel those butterflies crawling up, in my stomach. And instead of being like, man, all right, I really got to do this. Now it's almost reassuring to me. It's like, oh, good. I'm nervous. Like it's almost like a good sign to me now. It's just like, yes, like this is why I do it, man. Like this is a good sign. It means I'm still happy to be here. It means it's still challenging me. It's still giving me that feeling that I love so much from it. So I just chase that, man, as much as you can.
Yeah, it's like that performance anxiety is a really good thing because it not only sharpens like your focus and your attention, but then it also shows, like you just said, you still care, you still have that passion and that love for it. And that is something that can sometimes be hard to maintain, like depending on who you are as a person. Like if you training for a sport that you love because you got into it because you love it, and then you get into the training and now it's become a job, sometimes that can really lead to burnout. But you mentioned something that's really interesting, and I would love to dive into it a little bit, was you're like, you notice now that other athletes and other competitors are starting to watch your run. So what was that transition like to where you're like, you know, weren't really watched per se, but now you are. And so what has that kind of been like for you?
Dude, that was a big moment in my career because, you know, for as long as I could remember, I was the one that was watching. I was the one that was learning and chasing after the big leaders in my sport. And I showed up to this competition that we usually kick off our season with. It's in the Netherlands. It's in this indoor facility, and they usually build this real tight bank slalom course that's just got, you know, some kind of gnarly turns, and you're working with some real thin margins. It's almost like you're like going on a toboggan down a real narrow hallway. You know, it's insane. You get one thing wrong, you put your timing off a little bit, or you put your vision in the wrong spot, and you get stuck staring at your feet too long, and you'll just end up in the netting or like ejecting out of one of the turns. And so it's a bit punishing, but it works out really well for me because I have a smaller stature. I'm one of the smaller guys on the circuit. And so I just fit in there nice and comfy. And once I find my rhythm, it's basically just, you know, the sky's the limit, and I can really build speed in there. So I showed up this one year and, you know, just really trying to make a big impact. And I won the like introductory event the day before. And then I got a silver podium for the first World Cup on the next day. And then one day after that, it was like a double header. We had one more World Cup, same course, and I won that. And so to like win 2 times, podium all 3 times on the same course, that was I'd never done that before. I'd gotten a podium before, but this was like, I just won twice. And so suddenly it kind of, I don't know, I showed up to lunch later that day, and like just walking in with my tray, like I just started to feel the eyes on me because they were like, oh yeah, that's like the guy that just won. Like he set the fastest time of the day. And like, dude, it's crazy because he's only like 19. And I was just like, this is wild. Like, this is just an insane feeling. And as I walk past the Japanese team, and they're all smiling. And so I just smile and wave at them. And they're like, look, it's the bank slalom king. And I was like, dude, bank slalom king that's like, I wasn't ready to hear that. And so I just laugh, you know, and I'm like, thanks. And I go and I sit down and I start eating, and I'm like, wait, like this is kind of what this means now, huh? It's like I am now like one of the people that everyone else is trying to beat. It went from like, I'm trying to beat that guy, I'm trying to beat that guy, I'm trying to beat that guy, to like, that guy's trying to beat me, that guy's trying to beat me, that guy's trying to beat me. It was this weird shift in tone that I wasn't ready for. And then it kind of just continued to persist. Like now I've kind of ironed myself into like this kind of top 5, top 3 athletes that are in my category that, you know, when I show up, people are like, okay, all right. Like, Zach's here, Team USA showed up. Like, this is not going to be an easy one for sure. And now it's like something that I definitely feed off of like, when you can feel that energy of like the person in the gate next to you, that's just like, I got matched with you for my heat. You're like, yeah, you got matched with me for your heat. And like, it's not super cocky. It's not that like, oh yeah, like it's over for you. It's just like, yeah, like I am a competitor. And you and I both know that I'm going to make this as difficult as I possibly can for you to come out on top. Like it's never any kind of ill intentions, you know. It's something that I'm definitely still proud of. Like circling back to the community aspect is like, even some of my fiercest competitors, when we're in the gate together and we're about to drop on a heat, the very first thing that we'll do once we're all strapped in is just look at each other and just fist bump real quick. Just, hey man, good luck. See you at the bottom. Like, we're all here because we want to win. We want to beat the other guy for sure. But like, I think a lot of us definitely realize the reality of the situation, which is like, without my competitors, I don't have a sport. Like I don't have this opportunity. So like, just the fact that they're here is giving me the opportunity to give it my best, to give it my all, to really put myself to the test, see what I'm capable of. And if it weren't for fierce competitors like this would be boring, or I wouldn't be here, or this wouldn't even be a sport. And so like, there's still that general camaraderie, but then you do get into the gate and you're like, yeah, I hope I smoke you. Like it's just awesome, man. So yeah, it's interesting now to be at a point in my career where it's really just about now holding off the new younger kids that are showing up. And I'm already starting to get, phased out and crept up on. And yeah, man, it's cool. But I still have plenty of mentors that are still left in the sport. A lot of my current teammates are people that were there when I showed up to my first competition. And so I'm in this awesome phase of my career where I kind of have the best of both worlds. Like I'm still riding with the riders who taught me everything I know. And then I'm turning around and I'm giving as much of that as I can to this next generation of athletes that I can see this hunger and passion in, that got an earlier start than even I did, that are no doubt going to become fierce competitors in the future. And so right now it's just, for me, it's nothing but gratitude, because that feeling, like I said, wouldn't have been possible without some really incredible athletes showing up, putting me in my place, teaching me that I know nothing about snowboarding, and then teaching me how to get faster. And now I'm getting to turn around and do the same thing for the next generation. So I just think it's a new stress. It's a new kind of pressure, but like so fortunate that I get to experience that. That's some cool pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not ego, it's competition, right? But then again, we circle back to the community of like, yo, bro, good luck. Like, yeah, I want to smoke you, vice versa. It's the same feeling you have, but like, hope there's a safe ride, no one gets hurt. And then at the same time, like we got this friendly comp, and then when it's over, it's over. It's like, what's up? Let's go grab some brewskis.
Exactly.
I think that's what's really cool. And you find that in sporting events, which is great. But I also think that like when people, like you got that nickname, it's like that also shows the work that you have put in to the sport and to yourself to get better. So, that's a great compliment to have. Yeah. And throughout this conversation, you've mentioned like next generation and like, you're kind of like a veteran now in your sport at 25. So what is the legacy that you want to leave behind as these other guys are coming up?
Yeah, great question. That's something I've been spending a lot more time thinking about as of late. Is just, I do want my legacy to have a pretty big impact, and I want to be remembered in my sport as someone who helped grow it, who positively contributed to it. I definitely think I'm on the right track, just because I've been a good competitor, I've been a good teammate, and that's just a great place to start. But there's also, some kind of bigger projects that I hope that I can start on and maybe even see prosper. Of not necessarily starting my own team, but contributing to ones that exist right now that have just been fantastic developmental opportunities and pipelines for other athletes. And so I got my coaching certification to show up to like those regional competitions that I started out on and get my own coach's band. And so I've had some opportunities now to coach some other younger riders. Take them to nationals, see them compete and stuff like that. And so now it's also cool because I get to see the other side of this sport that I've been a part of for so long. I've always been the one in the gate, the one that feels like, he's kind of at the stick of this fate and is doing his best to control it. And it's so cool now to have this added perspective of a coach to like watch an athlete go down course, go over video with them, share some techniques that you think will help them, see them develop those over the course of a couple runs or, even a season or two. And then, go and get them their bib for the race, put them in the gate and be like, all right, man, good luck. I'm going to be, watching it turn one. And then you hike down there as fast as you can. You hear the call and then the gate opens and it's not you dropping on course. It's like this kid who you've watched ride for so long, and he's attacking it, getting after it, and you're cheering him on, but you're like left watching, and it's very, very cool. It's awesome that I get to experience that as well. But yeah, that's really just my focus is like now I'm just keeping an eye out for any opportunities of like whenever someone reaches out to me, that I usually know through the sport. And it's just like, hey, I could really use a coach because I don't have one and I can't afford one. But I need one for this regional race. Like, can you come? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Just have your mom like buy me dinner and I'll come and coach you, And so, Yeah. And so like I'll go and just do what I can to kind of to be the person that I wish I could have had, when I was young. Because my parents, they definitely spent money on coaching for me and stuff like that, and they helped pay for a lot of my travels around the world. And I realized that a lot of other people aren't as fortunate to have that, as fortunate to have parents that are in a position to sacrifice their time and money to fund your sports, because still a lot of parents like look at sports and see that as something that isn't realistic, see it as something that isn't a career opportunity. And so I want to do my best to just like help support those kids of like, you know what? Yeah, you can do it. Like, I'll help you. I'm a Paralympic athlete. Like, I got you. I'll be there. I'll have my armband on, and I'll bring my own little tuning table, and we'll throw some good wax on your board, and we'll set you up for success. So that's definitely what I'm trying to focus on now more in the future. I'm still not done being an athlete for sure. I don't know if you heard, but the recent news is 2034. The games are coming back to Salt Lake City. So we're going to be hosting the games again here, the Winter Games. And I think it's awesome, just first off, because the fact that we're reusing all of our facilities, and we only have to build like one new facility for one of the competitions, and everything else can just be reused. Like, dude, drastically helping the image of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, helping us cut down on a lot of unnecessary waste and stuff like that. And then, yeah, with it being 2034, I'll be turning 35 at those games. So I wish I was turning 25. I'm already 25, so that ship's sailed. But yeah, I mean, if I can compete at 35, I want to. That's the goal. I want to maintain my career for as long as I can, and that would just be kind of the perfect cherry on top, little bow to a career that I would definitely end on if I'm able to make it that far. But there's also plenty of time and opportunities for me to already just start investing in the next generation of my sport. Doing everything I can to grow up, because, like I said, I got to watch the sport be built from the ground up, and so if I can play a role in just helping it expand, then that's something I'll be able to live happily ever after with.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. Thanks for sharing kind of like what you want to do. And I think that's a big step to like help the next generation. And that's a great thing to be able to do. And do this entire conversation, I've enjoyed all of it. It's been a pleasure and an honor just talking to you and learning so much about you, and just love your spirit, like you said, when it comes to both competition and then, moving your sport forward, which is a big thing. And it's cool to hear all of you guys doing that and watching you guys do that. And it's going to be a great thing when the Olympics come around in 2034. And it's also going to be great for the Paralympics in 2034, and then the Paralympics in 2028 for summer, because now climbing is going to be in there. And
yeah. So cool.
Yeah. It's like this awareness is coming up and everything's growing, and it's phenomenal to see this growth.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, thanks for your time, Zach. I really appreciate it. Like I said, it's just been an honor to be able to speak to you and learn more about you.
Dude, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on the show. This has been awesome to get to chat with you.
Thank you.